Sponsored by Sue Minahan.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for soul growth. Come journey with us through astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Understanding the cosmic energies influencing our consciousness by the 4 major moon phases for the month, this is your Kaleidoscope Visions Panel.
I'm Sue Rose Minahan, founder of Talk Cosmos since 2018. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, consultant, speaker, writer, vibrational astrology student, Dwarf Planet University graduate, Kepler Astrology Toastmasters Club charter member. I have a fine arts music degree plus a certificate in jazz. I'm an artist, musician, and certified color energy life coach. Especially, I love mythology and esoteric philosophies.
I'm Amanda Pierce. I'm a soul-centered astrologer, blending intuition into my practice. I believe the universe is always working for our highest good and seek to empower my clients in our readings. I teach a 4-week series of empowerment-based meditation classes that connect you deeper into your own intuition and innate power. I work in communications with a passion for employee experience. I also have a BA in psychology. I'm passionate about healing and enjoy helping others create new realities and shift old paradigms.
And like the Sufi poet Rumi says,
you are the entire ocean in a drop.
Hello, Sue. And it looks like Sue's mic
Sue, we're going to have you unplug and replug your microphone back in real quick. It's not really working properly, but Amanda, go ahead and just tell us more about yourself in the meantime, and that we're missing John Chinworth for today's show, unfortunately, but he will be back.
Yes. So we're shifting gears a little bit with Kaleidoscope Visions, and we're going to be doing this Moon Power series for the rest of the year, where we look at the upcoming lunar cycle each month. So we want to give a lot of thanks to everyone who's participated in our transit readings since August of 2022. And we're very grateful for all of your participation and how it's kind of helped our listeners.
yes, indeed. I hope my sound is better.
Okay, we're almost there. We just need you to go into the settings and switch back to the correct microphone.
But I have. I don't know what's going on. It says the right microphone.
It's starting to sound better.
We can hear you, but it sounds a little muffled. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, for whatever reason, you decided to change gears, just like we are, I guess. Thank you, Amanda. That was beautiful. Yeah, we do appreciate it. It's been 2 years, amazingly, that we've been giving these transit readings. But life has a new dimension, and I think everybody will really relate to this because our new idea is that we are using the lunar phases. There's 4 primary ones, and they illuminate the changing process in our consciousness. From the forever, humanity, way before the spoken word, has looked at the moon to tell it about agriculture, how to migrate. It's and there are phases. Go ahead, Amanda.
I mean, you could say that it's even built into our DNA potentially. I mean, it's so ingrained in how humanity has evolved throughout the years.
Yes, indeed. And in many cultures, they have names. It was their seasonal time. It's quite exact, this calendar of time. Every 29 and a half days, there's a new, it's a cycle. It's actually between 28 and 29 because in one way it's 29 and a half days from one to the next. And then both of them, the moon and the sun, are luminaries. That means that we call them as planets, but they're luminaries. The moon reflects the light of the sun, and the sun is a star. It emits light. Now, all this is basic to many, but it's nice to review a little bit of the fundamental ideas.
And one of the ways to look at these moon cycles is the sun emits this beautiful bright light, and it's kind of the equivalent of spirit and of our spiritual journey, but it's so hard to see sometimes. And so the moon provides a reflection of that sun's light and gives us a little bit of space to actually view it and see it in a digestible way, in a way that's not going to blind us. So that's how we kind of use the moon cycles really to help us integrate our lessons.
That is perfect. It begins with a new moon. It's new beginnings. It's a seed point. They're at the same degree, but we can't see the sun because the earth is right in between.
Yeah, and here in the new moon cycle, we're acting a lot from instinct, and it can be very subjective. We're still taking in a lot of new information.
And at the first quarter, you'll see a half moon, and it depends where you're located on the planet. It'll either be the right side above the equator or on the left side below the equator. And on the equator, it'll be above or below. So, yes.
Yeah, and the light's starting to increase. So we're starting to see things come forward and come in, and we're taking action based on that. And it's an outward yang-based action. So we're taking action out in the world, and based on the information that's coming in with that light.
And it is called crisis in action, differentiating from the third quarter, but we'll get there. Then the moon has progressed. It wanes to the full moon, where you see the entire full moon, often for 3 days. It seems to hover there. And
so we have like full illumination. And so this is like full exposure of anything that's going on. So we have a lot more understanding at this point, and new perspectives can come in.
Exactly. Now I put new seed point, but I think I will edit that because I was preparing a lot of this. But it is where what we have progressed, it has illuminated, and we have the choice whether to keep it or prune it. You know, whether we're going to progress with it or it's just not working the way we want it. And of course, they're in the same degree, but they're opposite signs. On the equator again, I don't know why this got out of order a little bit, but this is showing you where if it was, well, it's full moon, but if it's a half moon, rather the half moon, it would be below or above the equator for the graphics. For the third quarter, it's a crisis in consciousness rather than the crisis of action, because by this time we have developed this seed development. You know, a moon travels, well, we'll get to that. It's pretty quick. It goes through all 12 signs in a month.
So this is another action point, but this is inward or yin action. So we're taking all the learnings that we've had so far with that full illumination from the full moon, and we're starting to integrate them. And so the dark is starting to come back in, and that's a very yin thing. So that's where we're starting to integrate all of that light. The light is decreasing so that we can process and integrate. And it's also a period where we're starting to gestate for the next cycle. And the seeds are starting to come forward in our consciousness, even if we're not really aware of it.
Good point. Just as we're doing now, really, it's a process that we're preparing because the new moon will be in the following week. The moon itself involves our emotions. And as you had indicated, Amanda, it's the past. It's our history. It's a whole cycle. It's processing. It's so personal. And it's our needs. What makes us safe?
Yeah, and it's very emotional. So this is an emotional process, and emotions often tell us a lot about where we are in our journey and where we may need to shift some things.
Yes, and we tell our lives through that story of our emotions. And some emotions are habits. I was really excited to learn that worry can be a habit. In other words, if you can break a lot of things, it's like it's a go-to. So in other words, let's make joy that see something in life that gives us just a moment of joy. And it does rule Cancer. The 4 phases here I have identified. The past, which we're in, is in Taurus. It's as of yesterday. It's a 3rd quarter. And then upcoming will be the 12-degree, 34-degree Leo moon. And then it goes to Scorpio, Aquarius, and the last 3rd quarter will be in Gemini. But you can look at this slide, and also we will start going into the charts. Shall we do that, or did you have a comment?
Yeah, and just one comment about this. The first 3 moon phases here are all fixed signs. So once we get to that 4th, it's a mutable sign, and there's a little more flexibility, but there will be a fixed sun and a fixed moon, and those can they don't like to change. So we'll look at that a bit.
Interesting. And also, I have noticed, like here, we're experiencing a fixed sign, Taurus. So in other words, the 3rd quarter is always going to be in that sign. It moves into the same mode, because there's the 4 modes of energy, or 3 modes of energy. I'm thinking 4 elements and 3 modes, which is fixed, mutable, and cardinal. Actually, it begins with cardinal. It can begin wherever you want it. The horoscope begins with cardinal, but it motioning forward, then solidifying, and then dissolving or scattering, however you want to look at it. The aspects, we have 2, the hard and the soft. Hard is what we call it in astrology. It's action-oriented, squares. And soft is flowing, like a trine. It's 120 degrees, or sextile connected. 2 points to bring out for this month, which are very important. Ceres, a dwarf planet, is in a toggling between the nodes of the lunar nodes. And Ceres is what many call the higher octave of the moon. It has to do with nurturing, but it's out of bounds. So it's how we nurture ourselves. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Ceres has a lot to do with where we have a sense of deep loss in our lives and a sense of grief because of that loss. So it can be quite emotional. It also relates to the moon. It's the higher octave of the moon, and it being out of bounds. There's a lot of opportunity here to do things a little bit outside the box, because out of bounds, it's outside of its normal structure. And so it has a lot more freedom there. And so we have a lot more freedom to think about things a little bit differently and process a little bit differently.
Yeah, out of bounds is actually beyond where the sun's path is for those folks astronomically. Mercury is also a contender here, because Mercury is doing one of its 3 retrogrades, and that will be starting after the full moon, beginning in the 1st quarter through into the 3rd quarter. So these will be continuing. Mm-hmm.
And even in the new moon period, Mercury is actually stationing to go retrograde. So we've already kind of started that process. So there will be that theme of extra reflection during this new moon period, or this lunar cycle.
We'll start now with the 3rd quarter. And this was from the Cancer new moon, which is not in a cardinal sign, but it is in the fixed. We're in a fixed point of, like you could say, survival and self not realization, but not actualization either. But it is where we are self-reliable, very self-reliable in Taurus. And it is at gestation time. And it's not a crisis. It is a crisis in consciousness. So whatever we have been working on now, as you can see politically in this country, we're going through a lot of refocusing, you might say.
Yeah, and I think what I would note in this chart is that the sun is opposing Pluto and the moon is squaring Pluto. So there's a big sense of coming into our own power more, self-empowerment. And so from the previous phase, like this is where we're starting to integrate that. And this is happening today, starting right now. So we're right now in that third quarter phase, and it'll be a period where we're looking to integrate any of those empowerment pieces for ourselves as we move into this next cycle. So keep that in mind while we go through the rest of the moon phases.
Yeah, for another week. And it is very active communicating. There'll be sudden changes. It has Mars and Uranus with Mercury. Those are the really instigators of our thoughts and actions. But it is a rebirth process. Haumea, which maybe many aren't aware of, is a dwarf planet, but also makes it a grand square with that Pluto, Sun, Moon. So let's see what happens with our month of August, which is 12 degrees Leo on the 4th of August. This is the new seed point. Those coming out of the gestation period that we're developing on now. We'll begin with, yes, what we say the action aspects.
Yeah, I think so the first thing to note is, or that I noted, was the for the sun and moon, they're conjunct at Leo at about 12 degrees. And this is like Leo is reaching for its new depths and maturity, and especially with Venus there at 29 Leo. This is a big piece. We're coming into shifting relationship dynamics because it's quincunx, both Pluto and Neptune. And so there's a big focus on this Venus. And a quincunx is it's a challenging energy. It's not comfortable at all. And it's asking us to step into deeper power with ourselves in a Leo heart-centered way.
Absolutely. We're looking at new perspectives. Jupiter is in an action-oriented square with Saturn, and this is Saturn's only aspect in this coming with the new moon. Of course, the chart shifts and later it will have other aspects, but at that moment, for that new moon seed that goes really till the next month through these changes, we're really trying to find the essential core of what our beliefs are. And people will get perhaps quite opinionated, but there are many changes because Jupiter is in Gemini. Gemini doesn't always look at just one thing. It's mutable and it's many focused. So it's going to have many voices and many thoughts. We know, again, politically speaking, both parties are really going through a lot of internal changes along with the public.
And this is Jupiter and Saturn's first connection since the grand conjunction. Is that right, Sue? Did I get that right?
It is since 2020. That was December 2020.
Yeah.
When it begins a 200-year cycle in air. Yes, so we're really continuing to.
And that period, when we had that in 2020, that was a big part of it was creating a new vision for ourselves going forward and creating that structure for ourselves in passion. And so doing that for ourselves personally, but also we're seeing it out in the world. And right now, the country is deciding which way to move forward for the next 4 years. And I think this is a big part of that.
And interestingly, all of these will be further developed on Talk Cosmos, because next week we do the full moon in detail with archetypal symbols, and we'll look at this from many other viewpoints, metaphysical viewpoints. And then the following week with Planet Buzz, we're going to look at that square with Jupiter and Saturn, the first square. And then the third week will be a new panel, U.S. Global Currents, where we look at the Democratic Convention like we did the other. So this is Amanda and I are doing a whole storyline here to show you how influential the whole month is going to be through the moon's focus.
And there's a couple other pieces that I'd like to say about that Venus. 29 degrees is always, it's the last degree. And so it's the final chance for us to work through these energies, with whatever's coming up for our lives as it relates to relationships and as it relates to how we value ourselves. So it's also coming out of a square with Uranus. Venus has been square Uranus. And so there's a need to really break free from the old patterns. And the other thing to note is that Ceres, which we just talked about, that deep loss and that grief, that is squaring the nodes that are in relationship signs. So the North node's in Aries, which is about the self. The South node is in Libra, which is about your relationships with others. As far as resolving this tension that we have around grief and loss, you would look to the South node to help resolve that. And that South node is in the Libra, which is about your relationships with others. It's also ruled by that Venus that's been square Uranus, quincunx Neptune, quincunx Pluto. So there's just a lot coming up around our relationships and how to move through them. But the key here is really not to give up on the relationships, but how do we manage them differently in a way that's going to empower us, in a way that honors the grief that we've been through and the loss that we've been through, but that allows us to really connect from our heart, which is a very Leo energy.
It is. And it also, I might say, this ongoing adjustment is really about incorporating, I always say, the greater source, where we came from, however you want to call it. But it's not just looking at the linear data that's right in front of us like a schedule, clicking on a TV, but it's realizing that because Neptune is part of the greater visions of living, it is quite a change. Then we have what we would call the flowing energies that are supporting this. They're flowing would be the trines of 120 degrees in astrology, and connecting is the sextile. And they create these mini trines. A mini trine is when you have two sextiles between a point that's connecting a trine. And there's three of them here. There's one, the sun and moon is in one, actually in two. Jupiter and Mars are in two. And they're all in two. And also the North node is in two. So it's really quite a dynamic. And then, of course, the nodes, it's that whole half where the nodes are opposing each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is, there's a lot of support for these relationship dynamics that we're moving through. I really like Mars trine the South node. Mars, when it's in a harder aspect, like a square, can often be quite challenging, but as a trine, and with Jupiter there, Jupiter's a benefic, which means it's a bringer of good. The trine allows for a lot of flow of energy and support and a lot of focus in these areas. So you're probably not going to miss it in your life.
You know, what I love too is that Mars Jupiter in Gemini is in what they call a point of Thales. He was a wonderful mathematician way back at BC. I think it was BC, I have to check, but it's very constructive. And it's where there's an opposition, such as the nodes, and a sextile and a trine. So with this toggle, this dynamic, we're going through this combustive, Mars is energy and Jupiter makes it big. So whatever we're doing, we can really prune and work through to continue to, as we progress to the full moon.
Yeah. And just to note also, all of these energies we've just talked about, just to reiterate, this is the new moon process. So there's no light that's come in at this point. The light's starting to increase. So we're going to be working at kind of instinctively at this point and just going without full information. But this is the platform that we start with.
Well, particularly too, because as you said, Mercury is stationary in Virgo, which it loves. It loves being in Virgo, which is very analytical, detail oriented. It can take all this information that both Mars and Jupiter are getting tossed at, which can be quite overwhelming, and sift through it and begin to focus. And it is looking in a supportive way to Ceres. So it's helping us figure out, how can we nurture ourselves? How can we get beyond some of the grief? Part of the world is in huge grief. We can't all think of roses without those thorns. If we look at the Middle East and those countries that are having really strong troubles, but perhaps this will help the nations come to some understanding. I don't know, but I can always be hopeful.
We can definitely be hopeful. And like this Venus in Leo, which is so prominent here in this chart, it's about, how do we move forward in dignity in our relationships? That's a big Leo word, dignity, and just looking to like, how do we want to redefine our relationships so that they are more heart-centered?
And dignity for all, because that Venus that was so challenged, you could say, with the heart aspects, is now in this beautiful trine with Chiron, along with Vesta, our hearth. So it is working to, as you had very well said, it's a healing process, this nurturing that we're doing. It's a whole hologram, you could say, of energies that are colliding together in this mix, like a beautiful fire. Well, Amanda, we have time now for a little break. We'll be back. This is Amanda Pierce and Sue Minahan, Talk Cosmos with Kaleidoscope Visions with the new moon for Leo. We'll be right back, and we'll be happy to continue with the lunar phases. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the Yang period of Leo, ruled by the solar sun. Having departed from a cycle based on the internal process of emotional attachments requiring security and safety, the energy of Leo externally manifests our legacy through children and artistic creations. As a fixed Yang fire sign that desires to ignite actualization, Leo the lion takes the risk to generously exhibit love and welcome all to share their stage with joyous pleasure for living life.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to newprosupplements.com, we cover the world of animals. This week, August 4th, is Shelter Rescue Sanctuary and anything that helps our animal friends Sunday. We'll check in with Meow Cat Rescue, Help Animals India, and Beth and Merritt Clifton from animals24-7.org. Plus, we'll find out about the events coming up at the Ananda Institute of Living Yoga. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Talk Cosmos brings insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for the soul growth with hour-long programs every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific on KKNW. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. And to find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com. So grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
Tell your friends about Alternative Talk 1150.
Hi, well, we're back again. And I just want to say right away that this week we have a birthday coming up for Amanda Pierce. Happy birthday!
Thanks, Sue. What a nice birthday wish.
Yeah, Nathan chimed in with his ever-loving horn there. I love it. Yes. So here we are. We have Amanda Pierce. You can contact her at Amanda Moon Astrology at Gmail. She's working on that. She works all the time, but she's working on her website too. And I am at talkcosmos.com, and you can always sign up for the newsletter and keep in touch with us and our new panels. And thank you for subscribing to the new panel is right here, U.S. Global Currents. We did one on Republican Convention, and we're doing the next one on the Democratic Convention. That'll be on the 18th of August. So thank you for signing up for the newsletter and following us. Here we have the first quarter of the lunar phase. That's a crisis in action. So after this full moon, or new moon, we have Venus that is now a singleton. There is not one, after all of that, with the full moon, it must be in hibernation, or not hibernation. The singleton can do whatever it wants, but it just can't relate to anything. So it's really working out. This is a major aspect.
And right, exactly. But the one big aspect it does make is a beautiful trine to Ceres. So Ceres we've talked about in the last chart, and Venus we talked about in the last chart, and here they are working together. Yeah. And so a little more connection on and recognition on what those areas of grief are that we may be working with here.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that out. So Ceres that's still, and in fact, coming up, it's in this very close T-square. All of July, it was within a few degrees orb. In August, the entire month is going to be exact. Most of the month, it's going to be at 8 degrees and then goes to 7 degrees, and so will the nodes. So here, this week, Venus we've really been working a lot on our values, our purpose, and our meaningfulness. And how are we going to direct this glory of Leo that wants to create, and learn how we're nurturing ourselves. It's going to be a very
so the light's starting to come in with this first quarter moon, and we're starting to see what's coming forward, and it's time for us to take action, like outward action, yang action in the world. And you can see here that the moon is opposing Uranus and the sun is squaring Uranus, and that's going to bring a lot of discomfort, a lot of potential surprises. It may keep us on our feet this week, or on our toes. So yeah, it's be open to new developments happening that you weren't sure were going to be there. This can bring a lot of like really vibratory energy into our systems. And whether you experience that as excitement or you experience that as anxiety, those two energies are very, very close. It's just, that's what this week is going to feel like. And there's going to be a bit of discomfort. There's going to be a lot of movement happening. And so just remembering to flow with it as much as possible, take action where you can.
And perhaps too, it's the moon, which is that anchor of our emotional, our habits, our home, our foundation in some ways, in many ways, and our story is in this supportive flow with Saturn that regulates. They're both time-oriented, the moon and Saturn. One is a process, the moon, and Saturn is like endings and beginnings. So we can find our boundaries. Perhaps that'll be a very helpful grounding mechanism.
I love that trine from Saturn to the moon. Yeah, very helpful and supportive. You may have like an elder or an authority figure come forward this week to kind of help you with these areas that are coming up. But yeah, it's here to kind of support us in being in the flow, trusting our intuition, and kind of just allowing ourselves to feel our way through things, because this moon is really, there is some discomfort there's discomfort from Uranus, but it's also quincunx Chiron. And so that's a lot of discomfort as well, and some wounding that may come up for us. And we may feel that emotionally. The sun is trine Chiron. That's beautiful. There's a lot of healing energy there around stepping into living from our heart. And your sun's going to want to do that beautifully, but your moon may feel a little uncomfortable with it.
And it probably needs to, because in a first quarter, it means that they're square, they're needing action. So
needs action.
The sun is in Leo, but in order to really prosper, we need to get that moon in Scorpio. It's 20 degrees Scorpio, so it's going to be very much focused on what is underneath, what's hidden, even secret to ourselves as it reveals. Remember, thankfully, this is all a process, and the moon travels so fast, 13 degrees in a day, that it's going to shift depending both nationally, internationally, and for ourselves.
Yeah, and that moon in Scorpio, wherever we have that in our chart, we may have some issues around betrayal. And so Scorpio doesn't trust as easily. And so it may feel any trust issues may come forward for us this week, anywhere where we've been burned. So this Uranus opposing the moon, like sudden shifts, we may want to kind of pull back and not trust others. And use your discernment on that. Sometimes that's correct. And other times it's just about leaning into our intuition and leaning into the flow of things. And that's where that Saturn, the support of Saturn, comes in.
I have a question, and I suppose it's fair to ask, but because I haven't been really keeping up with some parts of the news, but for the Republican convention that just was finished, are they still happy with Vance, or that might be a possible shift? Talk about betrayal. You hire somebody in a sense, and then
that's a good question. I mean,
yeah,
who knows what this roller coaster political system is going to bring us?
Oh, it's very true.
Yeah,
as we hopefully on a grand scale with a larger size, especially with the Olympics happening, maybe there'll be some resolution for some of the combatives that were over in the Middle East. Here, the moon has transited from its quarter, when you see it, it's half full, to being completely full, where it's reflecting all of the sun's light. It's Leo light. And it is in Aquarius. It's always in the opposite sign. So that's going to be at 27 degrees Leo 15 minutes, which is close to what Regulus was. But however, Regulus is now the fixed star. The eye of the heart of the lion is at 0 degrees Virgo, but it's relatively close. So this full moon has a lot of depth just from that standpoint. And it's conjunct. Well, of course it is, because Mercury is retrograde, but they're really close. They're like,
we didn't mention it. We didn't mention it in the last chart, but Mercury had turned retrograde, and here it is, very close to the sun. And so this month, with Mercury retrograde, there may be some miscommunications that come forward. So pay attention to that, and that may play heavily into this full moon period. You can see also the sun and moon are both square Uranus here, and at the same degree, like very close.
Yeah.
What is it? 4 minutes difference,
emotional.
Not 4 degree difference, but 4 minutes difference.
Yes. And we're going to change our story, because the moon is how we bring words to our emotions. And, the beautiful thing is that our story may have unhappy parts about it. And if we can see life in a new perspective, we can shift that, and that empowers how we feel about our self-actualization, such as our sense of reliance. Right now we're in the Taurus idea. So how we are surviving needs and our self-worth. It goes into self-worth too.
Yeah. So this could be a very eye-opening full moon where things come forward that kind of shock us a little bit potentially. And it just can be like a lot of discomfort. This is the energy of Uranus is the energy of the hurricane. And so if you were in a hurricane and you're seeing all of these like trees being ripped up and cars flying around, that is what the energy of Uranus is doing. And it's trying to rip away whatever is no longer serving us. So keep that in mind. This is just like, this is that high vibration energy. And we want to become as centered as possible so that we're in the eye of that storm and we're detached from any drama that's happening in our lives as much as possible. Because in the eye of the storm, it's incredibly calm. And you have that vision and um that sight to be able to see everything around you, but not be in it.
It's supported too by this point of Thales once again, but it's in a different, where Pluto, the dwarf planet of transformation, is the center point. I didn't put an arrow there, but that's down in the second house at 0 degrees Aquarius as it's retrograding before it's going into Capricorn, which will be next month. And it is with what we have alliances with Juno. She's the asteroid, the goddess of our relationships and marriages and what we have strong alliances with, and perhaps releasing that because it's South Node, and which is in Libra of our relationships, but it's opposite Neptune, so it's dissolving. Neptune dissolves things, and it brings things perhaps therefore a sense of confusion, but out of it we have really polished more our relationship. And again, I keep going back, we keep being asked to use our inner self as a guide, whether with source, to not think about the external. And I think that's perhaps it. Libra can have the shadow side of looking at how others, because they're so concerned with others, what's that other one really thinking? And you want to tailor your thoughts and emotions to it. And here it's saying, wait a minute, be true to yourself. You need to be true to where your direction is and answer to that. So it's a whole transformation.
Yeah, and I love also that here with the full moon, the sun is trine Chiron and the moon is sextile Chiron. So in the previous chart, the sun was supported by Chiron, but not the moon. Here they both are. And so there's a lot of healing energy to this. There may be surprises coming forward, but we're starting really to integrate it a bit more and to really work with this Uranus energy, because it is a month of Uranus energy, and we're going to be living in it. And by the time we get to the third quarter, we'll see that progress.
Yes, along with, it's so action oriented. Mars and Jupiter, they're dynamically involved with both our Venus. And when Mars and Venus are dynamically involved, they want, according to vibrational astrology, want to create something hands-on. They're not pie in the sky. They want some reality. And I think Leo likes that. Leo is a creation oriented. You can have your projects, you have your kids, but those are real material things that you're producing.
Yeah. And the moon in Aquarius loves to be detached. So you can lean into that as a helping way to help you kind of gain more clarity during this period. Even if something comes out of the blue, you can be like, oh, okay, I see that. I don't have to like fall into it emotionally. I can have a little more awareness around it and keep my cool.
And it's so true. What you're saying is that the moon in Aquarius, which is ruled by the modern ruler Uranus, it's in that action with. So it's really asking Uranus, okay, through the changes, how am I supposed to elevate and look at the whole process because it's community. It's more community oriented.
And how can I keep that emotional detachment, but still like live heart centered? Because that's what the sun in Leo wants.
Oh, yes.
How do we find that balance? It's not one or the other, you know?
Okay, let's see what develops after this. Here we have the full process has bloomed up to this point, and we can shed what's not working with our relationships, but yet we can work with the sudden changes. So in the third quarter, which is similar to what's happening right now, but a month later, starting on August 26th, it'll be that crisis in consciousness where we're looking at gestation cycle. We're still working with the Leo new moon, but we're preparing for that perfection of Leo or Virgo, pardon me.
We're moving out of that full moon period where we have that full light from the moon, and the light is starting to dissipate. And so we're starting to integrate that, and we're starting to take that inward action. Like, what do I need to do now for myself, based on the information that I received from that full moon period? And so it is action, but it's internal.
And the moon is in Gemini, meaning that it is mutable. Remembering that, as you had indicated, that we've finished up as of now, going through all 4 fixed signs, starting from Taurus to Leo to Scorpio to Aquarius. And now we're entering the moon with Gemini, which it is friends with Jupiter, which is in Gemini, and Mars in Gemini.
Well, and the moon is in this chart conjunct Uranus again. So again, Uranus is in here, and Uranus is square the sun. So, we're really working this energy around breaking free and releasing anything. Like Uranus is pulling it up and out of us to be released. So again, that can be challenging energies, but there's so much here in this chart that I love that makes it feel like we're really getting the hang of this energy by the end of it. And like you just said, that moon has moved into Gemini, the sun has moved into Virgo. So they're immutable signs now. They're working on adapting and shifting to whatever needs arise. And I love that the sun is in Virgo, which is a complementary sign to Taurus or to Uranus in Taurus. Both of them are earth signs. So there's a little more flow, even though they're in a square, there's a little more flow with it.
And Venus is paramount here. Venus now is so aspected. It's getting lots of ways to go. And it is in that analytical sign of Virgo. Now, many people might say that I think Venus in many ways, if it wants to introspect and find what its values are, loves that. It may not be quite as social as other signs that Venus is in, but Venus needs that now after all the work that she's gone through. And she is not only in a grand trine of change with Pluto and the moon and Uranus of sudden changes, but she's in a kite where she is also relating with the Neptune. So, from what I understand with kites, it's a matter of that's another way of transformation. Neptune dissolves things. It's more focused on the unconscious and the collective, but in a unconscious way. And it's where we're all one, yet we need that individuality still, but that helps maybe shift and refocus, as you said, with the moon being elevated before in a perspective. Now the moon is gathering up the changes that are happening, and Venus is trying to figure it out.
Moon in Gemini loves gathering information. It just like eats it up. So there's a lot happening here, and I love that in the new moon we saw Venus at 29 Leo, and now we've got Venus at a late degree 26 Virgo. So it's moved almost a full 30 degrees on, and like we said, that Venus had a lot of challenging aspects to it in the new moon. Here, it's opposite Neptune. It's trine Pluto. In the previous chart, those were much harder aspects to deal with. And here it was square Uranus before, and now it's trine Uranus. So we're really working with these energies and learning how to like integrate them better. Virgo is such a sign of humility, where Leo, that's, it's a little bit more of a challenge, but this is the evolution of the signs from Leo to Virgo. So coming more into humility in our relationships and willing to take the steps and do the work to grow, that's very Virgo. And so this is like, there's going to be new information coming in, and it's time for us in this third quarter to start integrating it. And this Venus in Virgo is a beautiful energy to do that.
And Mercury is still retrograde in Leo, meaning when it's retrograde, instead of just having its head focused forward, it's looking backwards and forwards. And that can change its orientation, but it's so important because Leo can use that process to just to realize really where they're standing. But it will, I think, in the few days after that, on the 28th, which is 2 days later, begin to station to go to direct. So we're at the tail end of this retrograde.
Yeah, it's a highly reflective month. There's a lot happening, and we'll need to really stay adaptable as much as possible. But at the same time, it's really good for allowing us to stay detached and kind of reflect as we go on the energies. I also really like that the sun is trine Ceres in this chart. So that's a beautiful support for all of the work that we're doing around grief and loss in our relationships. So that's really supportive because those themes are potentially going to come up during this month as well.
Yeah, and the connections between those little dotted lines in this particular chart, folks, are the sextiles, which just means connecting energies. It's connecting this, it's connecting that. It's very strong energy, really, to have connections, sextiles. And so whether it's, and we can see the degrees. So in other words, Jupiter is at 18 degrees and the ascendants and Mars is at 24 degrees. Mercury is at 21. The ascendants for the United States is 19, but it's Mercury, which is our thinking power, to our action, to our belief, to growing things big. And of course, Jupiter also involves religion and higher education and so many aspects of this. So we're going to have so many voices that are in the mix but then that's how we can pick and choose, what happens. And then moving on to that transformation with ultimately Pluto, it's almost like a full circle that it goes through with Neptune.
And this is the last moon cycle with Pluto in Aquarius before it moves back into Pluto in Capricorn. So the next moon cycle, Pluto will be in Capricorn, and we'll be looking at this a little bit differently.
Very good point, because again, it goes back to community and elevation, trying to raise the better good of everybody, the collective, to a higher notch. The United States natal moon is actually at 27 degrees Aquarius. It's going to be in square. It's going to be a lot of action involved with this. Oh, all right. Full course.
Yeah. And this is also a reminder that this is a gestation period right now, this third quarter lunar phase. It's a gestation for the upcoming months. So taking this time to do as much integration as possible will really set you up beautifully.
Yes. Well, to remind people, I am on Liz Mouchette's Astrology Star Sisters, Talk Over Tea, and we're going to talk about Ceres and the Moon. So check in with that. That'll be great fun. And you can find it on my YouTube for videos with Sue Minahan. And then, of course, we have all these wonderful other playlist selections. Amanda, thank you. This has been delightful. You know, you started with me with Cosmic Collaborations. And so it's been a wonderful process since 2019.
Yes, it has been. It's been an evolution, and it's always fun. Whichever direction we go, I always enjoy it. There's so much to talk about in astrology.
Yeah, and the moon is quite personal and exciting. So we're making new stories. Enjoy your wonderful summer with Bountiful Leo. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining an insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests awaken consciousness by connecting soul growth patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next Sunday, 1 p.m. Pacific Time, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.